This is a video about one of the most powerful problems in game theory. A puzzle so simple that anyone can understand it, yet so deep that it has reshaped how economists, political leaders, and even biologists see the world. Problems of this kind don't just stay inside textbooks, they appear in everyday life, between competing businesses, between nations in conflict, and even between friends deciding who should do the dishes. Curious about how the world really works? Not the myths, not the shortcuts, the real science behind everything we see and experience. On this channel, we explore mind-bending physics, unravel the secrets of the universe, and uncover the hidden patterns that shape our reality. If that excites you, subscribe for weekly deep dives into science and discovery. Hit like and share with friends. Your curiosity drives our next adventure. Leave a comment and let us know what puzzles we should solve together. Entire game shows have been built around this very concept. At first glance, it looks like a simple game. 2 players, 2 choices, and a clear set of outcomes. But hidden in the mechanics of this game lies one of the greatest paradoxes of human behavior: the tension between self-interest and cooperation. The consequences of this problem stretch far beyond theory. They can mean the difference between peace and war, survival and destruction, flourishing and collapse. And in its structure, we may even find the roots of cooperation, one of the most surprising phenomena in nature itself. On September 3, 1949, an American reconnaissance plane flying over Japan quietly collected air samples. When those samples were analyzed, scientists discovered traces of radioactive isotopes. At first, this was puzzling. The United States hadn't conducted any nuclear tests that year, so where had the radiation come from? Soon, the answer became terrifyingly clear. The Soviet Union had tested its first atomic bomb. In an instant, America's monopoly on nuclear weapons, a dominance earned through the Manhattan Project just a few years earlier, was gone. The problem of Western Europe and the United States is now far more serious than before, and perhaps the imminence of war is greater, one American official said. Some military leaders argued the only logical move was to strike first, to launch an unprovoked nuclear attack on the Soviet Union before it could build more bombs, to, as one Navy secretary bluntly put it, become aggressors for peace. Even John von Neumann, the brilliant mathematician who had founded the very field of game theory, remarked chillingly, "If you say, why not bomb them tomorrow? I say, why not bomb them today? If you say today at 5 o'clock, I say, why not 1 o'clock?" The world had entered a dangerous new game. But what rules should be followed? How could nations locked in existential rivalry make rational choices when each option seemed to risk catastrophe? In 1950, researchers at the Rand Corporation, a think tank advising the US government, turned to game theory to find answers. 2 mathematicians there developed a model that, without realizing it, mirrored the exact structure of the US-Soviet standoff. The model would come to be known as the prisoner's dilemma. So, let's play a game. Imagine a wealthy banker places a chest of gold coins on the table. You and another player are invited to sit down. The rules are simple. Each of you has 2 options. You can cooperate, or you can defect. If you both choose to cooperate, the banker rewards you each with 3 coins. If one of you cooperates while the other defects, the defector takes 5 coins and the cooperator gets nothing. And if you both defect, you each walk away with just 1 coin. The objective seems obvious: collect as many coins as possible. Now, here's the dilemma. Suppose you think your opponent will cooperate. Then your best move is to defect, because instead of 3 coins, you could get 5. But what if your opponent decides to defect? Well, if you cooperate, you get nothing. If you defect, you at least walk away with 1 coin. In either case, defecting looks like the smarter choice. But if both players are rational, and both follow the same logic, you each end up defecting. That means you both receive just 1 coin each. And yet, if you had cooperated, you could have had 3 each. This is the core paradox of the prisoner's dilemma. acting in your own self-interest leads to a worse outcome for everyone, including yourself. Now, let's step out of the game room and back into history. For the United States and the Soviet Union, the coins were nuclear weapons. If both nations had cooperated and agreed not to build more, they could have avoided an arms race, saved enormous resources, and lived under less constant threat. But if one built nukes while the other held back, the builder would gain enormous power. So both sides defected. They each built more and more bombs. By the 1980s, the US and Soviet Union had amassed tens of thousands of nuclear weapons, enough to destroy the planet several times. The cost? Nearly $10 trillion spent on weapons that, in the end, could not even be used. Just like in the coin game, both would have been far better off cooperating. But the logic of defection, the fear of being the one left vulnerable, drove them into a situation where both were worse off. This is why the prisoner's dilemma is one of the most studied problems in all of game theory. It captures the essence of conflict, rivalry, and mistrust. And it doesn't just show up between superpowers, it appears everywhere. Consider the natural world. On the African savanna, impalas are plagued by ticks. Left untreated, these parasites can spread disease, cause paralysis, even kill. Impalas remove ticks by grooming, but they can't reach every spot on their own body. They need help. Now, grooming another impala comes at a cost. It burns energy, uses precious fluids, and distracts you from watching for predators. For any single impala, the selfish choice is to defect, not to groom the other. But eventually, you'll need grooming too. So do you risk helping, or do you hold back? In other words, cooperate or defect.
If impalas only met once, defection would always make sense. Why pay the cost if you'll never see the other animal again? But in reality, impalas live in herds. They interact every single day. And when you play the same game not once, but over and over again, everything changes. Because suddenly, today's decision affects tomorrow's outcome. If I defect today, you'll remember, and the next time, you may retaliate. What was once a one-shot dilemma becomes an ongoing relationship. And that raises a profound question. What is the best strategy when the prisoner's dilemma isn't just played once, but repeated endlessly? This is exactly what a political scientist named Robert Axelrod set out to discover in the early 1980s. His experiment would transform how we think about cooperation, not just in politics and economics, but in evolution, society, and even our daily lives. Robert Axelrod had a simple but brilliant idea. Instead of just theorizing about cooperation, he decided to run a tournament. He invited experts in mathematics, psychology, political science, and computer science to submit computer programs that could play the prisoner's dilemma repeatedly. Each program would face off against every other hundreds of times, and points would be tallied up at the end. The goal was clear: design the best strategy for surviving in a world of repeated dilemmas. Some programs were aggressive. They always defected, hoping to exploit others at every turn. Others tried complex systems of deception, starting nice but quickly shifting to betrayal at the slightest hint of weakness. A few were extremely forgiving, willing to cooperate again even after being betrayed. But out of all the sophisticated, carefully engineered submissions, the winner turned out to be one of the simplest strategies imaginable. It was just 4 lines of code written by a Canadian psychologist named Anatole Rappaport. The strategy was called tit for tat, and it worked like this. On the very first move, cooperate. After that, simply do whatever your opponent did in the last round. If they cooperated, you cooperate. If they defected, you defect right back. That's it. No advanced calculations, no complicated memory, just a straightforward rule. Be nice first, but don't let yourself be exploited. And yet, this tiny program outperformed them all. Even more surprising, Axelrod ran the tournament a second time. He published the results of the first and invited people to try again, giving them the chance to improve. Surely, now that everyone knew how tit-for-tat worked, someone would design a cleverer, more dominant strategy. But the result was the same. Tit-for-tat won again. Why? Because tit-for-tat had three crucial features that made it powerful. It was nice. It never defected first. This meant it was never needlessly aggressive, and it encouraged cooperation whenever possible. It was retaliatory. If betrayed, it punished immediately by defecting next round. That made it impossible to exploit. It was forgiving. If the opponent returned to cooperation, tit-for-tat did too. This allowed relationships to recover from mistakes. It turned out that in a world of repeated interactions, success didn't come from ruthlessness or cunning, but from a balance of kindness and toughness. And this discovery had profound implications, because suddenly, the prisoner's dilemma wasn't just a game. It was a model for understanding trust, conflict, and cooperation in everything from economics to biology. Think about business. Two competing companies could slash prices to undercut each other, both losing profits, or they could quietly maintain stable prices, allowing both to thrive. Which path they choose mirrors the same logic of the dilemma. Or consider evolution. Vampire bats often share blood meals by regurgitating for one another. But what if a bat always takes and never gives? In the short term, it benefits. But over time, freeloaders are excluded, while cooperative bats survive. Nature itself seems to have evolved a form of tit-for-tat. Even human relationships, friendships, families, marriages, echo this dynamic. Cooperation builds trust. Betrayal leads to retaliation. But forgiveness can repair bonds. Axelrod's little tournament revealed something bigger than just a winning program. It revealed a deep truth about survival itself, that cooperation, not aggression, often wins in the long run. But there's still one problem. Tit-for-tat is powerful, yes, but it isn't perfect. In fact, under certain conditions, it can spiral into endless cycles of revenge, dragging everyone down. So the next big question became, how can cooperation not just emerge, but actually last in a messy, unpredictable world? And that's where the story gets even more fascinating. On paper, tit-for-tat looked unbeatable. It was simple, fair, and shockingly effective. But there was one flaw in its design that became obvious as soon as you introduced a little bit of real-world messiness. Let's go back to our game of coins. You and I sit across the table, and I decide to cooperate. I stretch out my hand with an open palm. But imagine that by accident, the banker miscounts and records my move as a defection. Suddenly, the system thinks I betrayed you, even though I didn't.
What happens next? You retaliate. You defect on the next turn. I see that, and assuming you've turned against me, I defect too. Now we're trapped in a cycle of endless retaliation, all because of a single mistake. This is exactly the weakness of tit-for-tat. It doesn't know the difference between intentional betrayal and accidental miscommunication. In the real world, misunderstandings are everywhere. A harsh word said in stress, a missed phone call, a delivery arriving late, all can be seen as defections, even if no betrayal was intended. So how do you fix this? Researchers tried variations. One was called generous tit-for-tat. It worked almost the same, but every once in a while, after being betrayed, it would still choose to cooperate. This tiny bit of generosity broke the cycle. It allowed players to escape endless revenge and rebuild trust. Another was contrite tit-for-tat, which tried to detect whether itself had made a mistake. If it accidentally defected, it would act more forgiving in the next round, signaling that it wasn't an intentional attack. These tweaks revealed something profound. Cooperation is not just about fairness, but also about tolerance. A world that punishes every single mistake without mercy quickly collapses into chaos. But a world that balances justice with forgiveness creates resilience. And this isn't just theory, we see it all around us. Consider international relations. Two countries might get caught in a trade dispute. One raises tariffs, the other retaliates. Before long, both sides are locked in an economic war that neither actually wanted. But if either side introduces a little forgiveness, perhaps lowering tariffs slightly as a gesture of goodwill, the cycle can break. Or think about everyday life. In a friendship, maybe someone forgets your birthday or doesn't return a call. If you retaliate with coldness or anger, the relationship spirals downward. But if you allow for forgiveness, trust can be rebuilt, and the bond often becomes even stronger. Evolutionary biology also supports this. Studies of animals show that cooperation is rarely absolute. It is often noisy. Mistakes happen, signals get crossed, and betrayals occur, sometimes unintentionally. Species that have survived are those that learned not just to cooperate, but to repair cooperation after it breaks. And here's the striking part. When Axelrod and others simulated these variations in repeated prisoners' dilemmas, the strategies that balanced toughness with forgiveness often performed even better than pure tit-for-tat. They weren't just successful in the short run, but stable in the long run. It's a lesson that applies everywhere, from boardrooms to biology. The best systems are not the ones that never fail, but the ones that can recover when they do. Think of ecosystems. Forests burn, but regrow. Economies crash, but recover. Families fight, but reconcile. What matters is not perfection, but resilience. The Prisoner's Dilemma, with all its abstract simplicity, had exposed a deep truth about life. Cooperation isn't a fragile ideal that shatters at the first betrayal. It's a dynamic process, constantly tested, sometimes broken, but capable of healing stronger than before. And once you see the world through this lens, you realize something unsettling. Many of the conflicts we face today, from climate change to political polarization to global arms races, are all just massive, messy versions of the same game. Each side fears being the sucker who cooperates while the other defects. Each side prefers to defect even if it means both sides lose. But game theory shows us there is another way. Not blind trust, not ruthless aggression, but a balance. Start by cooperating, defend yourself against betrayal, and, when possible, forgive. It sounds almost moral, but it isn't. It's mathematics. And that's the beauty of the Prisoner's Dilemma. It doesn't just explain why cooperation is so hard. It shows us the conditions that make it possible. The Prisoner's Dilemma may look like just a puzzle, a simple coin game on a table, but behind it lies a mirror of our world. From nations at war to animals in the wild, from business deals to personal relationships. It shows us that selfishness is tempting, mistrust is easy, and cooperation is fragile. But it also shows us that trust, fairness, and forgiveness aren't just noble ideals, they're winning strategies. And once you see that, you start to notice it everywhere. In every handshake, every compromise, every moment of trust, the same game is being played. The only question is, when it's your turn, will you cooperate or defect?